Sir, step out of the vehicle. Why? What's the problem? Step out of the vehicle now. Officer, I'm a federal employee. I work at the VA. I'm on my lunch break. What's this about? We have reports of a vehicle matching this description involved in suspicious activity. Suspicious activity? I'm sitting in a parking lot eating lunch. Do you have identification? Yes, I have my federal employee badge and my military ID. I'm a veteran. I served 2 tours in Afghanistan. Put your hands where I can see them and step out slowly. This is a mistake. I haven't done anything wrong. Get out of the vehicle now or we will remove you by force. Special Agent Kevin Thornton had been with the Department of Homeland Security for 9 years when he made a decision that would end his federal career and cost taxpayers $8 million. He was 37 years old, experienced enough to know that detaining someone without reasonable suspicion violates the Fourth Amendment, experienced enough to understand that mistaking a VA employee on lunch break for a suspected criminal requires actual evidence, but apparently convinced that his instincts about suspicious behavior were more reliable than established law. One Tuesday afternoon in a public parking lot in Alexandria, Virginia, he and his partner detained a black man sitting in a parked sedan. The man was Marcus Williams, a 34-year-old Veterans Affairs case manager and Army combat veteran who was eating a sandwich between morning and afternoon appointments. What Thornton did next, ordering Williams out of his vehicle without articulable suspicion, handcuffing him despite immediate identification as a federal employee, and holding him face down on hot pavement for 18 minutes while backup verified what Williams had told them in the first 30 seconds, would become evidence that some federal agents believe their authority exists independent of constitutional constraints. A black man in his mid-30s, Marcus Williams, was sitting in the driver's seat of his 2019 Honda Accord with the windows down, finishing a turkey sandwich from the subway across the street. His VA employee badge hung from a lanyard around his neck. His military challenge coin sat in the cup holder. A Bluetooth headset was visible in his ear as he listened to a podcast. No weapons, no contraband, no violation, just a veteran on lunch break between client appointments. But Special Agent Thornton saw him through a filter so distorted by assumptions about who looks suspicious that he couldn't process a black man sitting in a parked car as anything other than a threat requiring investigation. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. The parking lot behind the Landmark Shopping Center sits on Duke Street in Alexandria, Virginia. A mixed-use commercial area about 6 miles from Washington, D.C., the lot serves a cluster of businesses including a Subway, a CVS pharmacy, a nail salon, and a dry cleaner. During weekday lunch hours, the lot fills with office workers grabbing food, running errands, or sitting in their cars taking phone calls or eating lunch in brief escapes from their desks. Chain-link fencing separates the parking area from the residential neighborhood behind it. A few mature oak trees provide shade near the edges. Security cameras mounted on light poles capture most of the lot, though blind spots exist near the dumpster enclosure at the far end. It was 12:35 p.m. on a Tuesday in July. The temperature had reached 91 degrees under cloudless skies, the kind of oppressive summer heat that makes Washington area humidity feel like walking through soup. The asphalt radiated heat in visible waves. Most people who grabbed food darted quickly back to air-conditioned cars or offices. The lot was about 2/3 full, maybe 40 vehicles scattered across 60 spaces. A few people sat in their cars with engines running, air conditioning blasting. Others walked quickly between their vehicles and the surrounding businesses. Marcus Williams had parked in a spot near the middle of the lot, approximately 100 feet from the subway where he'd purchased his lunch. His black Honda Accord was clean, well-maintained, registered in his name. A Veterans Affairs parking permit hung from his rearview mirror. His windows were down to catch whatever breeze might exist. He turned off the engine to save gas while he ate and listened to a podcast about military history. It was the lunch break between his morning appointments at the VA office in Springfield and his afternoon schedule at the regional office in Arlington. Marcus Williams had been a case manager with the Department of Veterans Affairs for 6 years. 6 years helping veterans navigate benefits, disability claims, mental health services, and the complex bureaucracy that separates former service members from the support they've earned. He managed a caseload of 127 veterans, ranging from Vietnam-era retirees to recent combat veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan. He'd guided veterans through PTSD treatment programs, secured housing assistance for homeless veterans, and fought to get disability ratings upgraded when medical evidence supported higher compensation. His supervisors called him the case manager who never gave up on a veteran. His clients called him the person who actually cared whether they got help. Marcus Williams understood his clients because he had been one. He'd enlisted in the Army at 19 years old, completed infantry training at Fort Benning, and deployed to Afghanistan twice. His first deployment lasted 12 months in Kandahar province, conducting security patrols and training Afghan National Army units. His second deployment took him to Helmand province for 15 months, one of the most dangerous assignments during the height of combat operations. He'd earned the Army Commendation Medal for actions during a firefight that saved 3 wounded soldiers. He'd been promoted to sergeant. He'd led a squad of 9 soldiers through some of the hardest fighting of the war. He returned from his second deployment with invisible wounds that took years to address. PTSD manifested in hypervigilance, difficulty sleeping, and moments when sounds or situations triggered combat memories. He'd gone through VA treatment programs, learned coping mechanisms, and rebuilt his life. He'd used his GI Bill to earn a bachelor's degree in social work from George Mason University, graduating with honors while working part-time and attending therapy sessions. He'd been hired by the VA immediately after graduation, his combination of military experience and social work training making him exactly the kind of case manager the department needed. At 34 years old, Marcus Williams was exactly where he'd worked to be, stable, employed in meaningful work, helping other veterans navigate the challenges he'd survived. He lived in a modest apartment in Alexandria. He drove a reliable car. He maintained close friendships with several veterans from his unit. He attended therapy sessions monthly to manage PTSD symptoms. He volunteered at a local homeless shelter that served veterans. He'd built a life defined by service, both in uniform and after. That Tuesday, Marcus had spent the morning at the VA office in Springfield meeting with clients. He'd helped an 82-year-old Vietnam veteran file an appeal for increased disability benefits. He'd coordinated mental health services for a young Marine struggling with adjustment after leaving active duty. He'd secured emergency housing vouchers for a homeless veteran sleeping in his car. The work was exhausting but fulfilling. Between his morning and afternoon appointments, he had exactly 45 minutes to grab lunch and drive from Springfield to Arlington. He'd stopped at the subway on Duke Street at 12:25 p.m., ordered a turkey sandwich, and returned to his car to eat rather than sitting inside the restaurant. He was dressed in business casual attire, khaki pants, a light blue button-down shirt, brown leather shoes. His VA employee badge hung visibly from a lanyard around his neck, the Federal Eagle logo and his photo clearly displayed. His military challenge coin, a memento from his unit in Afghanistan, sat in the cup holder next to his phone. His laptop bag containing case files for afternoon appointments rested on the passenger seat. He looked like what he was, a federal employee on lunch break between appointments. He'd done nothing to attract attention. He'd violated no law, disturbed no one, threatened nothing. His presence in that parking lot was as unremarkable as the dozens of other people eating lunch or running errands. But to 2 federal agents driving through the parking lot that afternoon, Marcus Williams sitting in his car was something else entirely, and they had decided to investigate. Special Agent Kevin Thornton was 37 years old. He'd been with the Department of Homeland Security for 9 years, assigned to the Federal Protective Service Division responsible for protecting federal facilities and investigating threats to federal property and personnel. He considered himself vigilant, proactive, someone who took threats seriously. His supervisors described him as aggressive in pursuit of leads, but sometimes lacking in judgment about what constitutes reasonable suspicion. In 9 years, Kevin Thornton had compiled a record that should have raised concerns at multiple levels of supervision. 7 formal complaints. 7. 5 of them involved allegations of unlawful detention, excessive use of authority, or racial profiling. 2 complaints had been sustained, resulting in written reprimands and mandatory retraining on constitutional limitations of investigative authority. The other 5 had been closed with findings of not sustained or insufficient evidence, despite witness statements and circumstantial evidence that contradicted Thornton's incident reports. Thornton had a pattern. He detained people he perceived as suspicious based on minimal information and subjective assessments. A Middle Eastern man photographing a federal building from a public sidewalk. Thornton detained him for 90 minutes, searched his phone without a warrant, and filed a suspicious activity report. The man was an architecture student completing an assignment. A Hispanic woman sitting in a car near a Social Security office. Thornton approached with his weapon drawn, demanded identification, and held her for questioning about why she was there. She was waiting for her elderly mother who was inside applying for benefits. A young black man walking near a federal courthouse. Thornton stopped him, demanded to know his business in the area, and ran his identification for warrants. He was a law student who worked part-time at a legal aid office across the street. The pattern was clear. Thornton equated minority presence near federal facilities with potential threats. He acted on hunches rather than articulable facts. He detained first and sought justification later. And despite 2 sustained complaints and mandatory retraining, his approach never changed. That Tuesday afternoon, Thornton was conducting routine patrols with his partner, Special Agent Lisa Hernandez, when he noticed Marcus Williams sitting in a parked car in the landmark shopping center lot. In Thornton's mind, something seemed off. A black man sitting alone in a parked car in the middle of the day, windows down despite the heat. Not going into any of the businesses, just sitting there. Thornton's mind filled in a narrative, possible surveillance, potential threat, suspicious activity requiring investigation. Never mind that sitting in a parked car isn't illegal. Never mind that eating lunch is a common activity. Never mind that the parking lot serves multiple businesses and people use it constantly. Thornton saw a black man and decided investigation was warranted. He pulled the unmarked government SUV into the lot and parked 2 spaces away from Williams. He observed for approximately 2 minutes, watching Williams eat his sandwich and occasionally look at his phone. Nothing about Williams' behavior suggested criminal activity. He wasn't casing businesses. He wasn't meeting anyone. He wasn't handling anything suspicious. But Thornton had made his decision. He approached Williams' vehicle with his hand resting on his holstered weapon, a posture designed to establish dominance and control. His partner Hernandez followed, her expression uncertain. She would later testify that she'd questioned whether they had reasonable suspicion for the stop, but Thornton was the senior agent, and she deferred to his judgment. Do you think federal agents should face automatic suspension after 5 complaints involving unlawful detention? Drop your answer below. Marcus Williams was listening to a podcast about the Battle of Thermopylae when a shadow fell across his car. He looked up and saw a white man in his late 30s standing next to the driver's window, a federal badge hanging from his neck, his hand resting on a holstered gun. "Sir, step out of the vehicle." Marcus pulled out his earbuds, confused. "Why? What's the problem?" Thornton's voice was flat, authoritative. "Step out of the vehicle now." Marcus felt his heart rate spike, a familiar sensation from combat that his therapist had helped him recognize and manage. He forced his breathing to remain steady. "Officer, I'm a federal employee. I work at the VA. I'm on my lunch break. What's this about?" Thornton ignored the question. "We have reports of a vehicle matching this description involved in suspicious activity." Marcus glanced at his Honda Accord, one of the most common sedans on American roads. Suspicious activity. "I'm sitting in a parking lot eating lunch. I've been here for maybe 10 minutes. Hernandez stepped closer, positioning herself near the passenger's side. Her hand also rested on her weapon. "Do you have identification?" Marcus gestured to the badge hanging around his neck. "Yes, I have my federal employee badge right here. I also have my military ID in my wallet. I'm a veteran. I served 2 tours in Afghanistan with the Army." Thornton's expression didn't change. "Put your hands where I can see them and step out of the vehicle slowly." Marcus placed his hands on the steering wheel, palms visible. "This is a mistake. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm a federal employee. I work for the VA. My badge is right here. You can see it." This is where assumptions become accusations. Special Agent Thornton had approached Marcus Williams with a predetermined conclusion: suspicious person requiring investigation. When Williams immediately identified himself as a federal employee and military veteran, when he displayed his badge and offered his military ID, Thornton didn't reassess. He escalated. Every piece of information that should have ended the encounter was dismissed. He wasn't looking at a VA case manager on lunch break. He was looking at someone who needed to be controlled. Thornton's voice hardened. "Get out of the vehicle now, or we will remove you by force." Marcus knew he had a choice. He could continue to assert that this detention was unlawful and risk this escalating to violence, or he could comply, document everything, and address the constitutional violation through proper channels. His military training and his work with veterans had taught him that surviving the encounter was more important than being right in the moment. "I'm complying. I'm reaching for my seatbelt. I'm going to unbuckle it and step out slowly." Marcus unbuckled his seatbelt with exaggerated slowness, his hands always visible. He opened the door and stepped out of the vehicle. The heat from the asphalt hit him immediately, intense even through his shoes. "Put your hands behind your back." Marcus' voice remained controlled, but his disbelief was evident. "You're detaining me. For what? I'm a federal employee. I showed you my badge. I'm on lunch break. What crime do you suspect me of committing?" Thornton pulled handcuffs from his belt. "Hands behind your back now." Marcus complied. Thornton grabbed his wrists roughly and snapped the handcuffs on tight, the metal biting into his skin. "You're being detained for investigation. We'll verify your identification and release you if everything checks out." "If everything checks out?" "My badge is hanging around my neck. My military ID is in my wallet in my back pocket. You can verify everything in 30 seconds. Thornton pushed Marcus forward, guiding him away from the vehicle toward the front of the government SUV. "Get on the ground." Face down, Marcus' training kicked in. He'd been through detainment scenarios in the military. He knew compliance was survival. "On the ground. It's 91 degrees. The asphalt is burning hot. Get on the ground now." Marcus lowered himself to his knees, the heat from the pavement searing through his pants. Then Thornton pushed his shoulder, forcing him face down. The asphalt was scorching, the heat immediately painful against his cheek, his chest, his arms. His hands were cuffed behind his back, preventing him from protecting his face. "I'm complying. I'm a veteran. I have PTSD. This position is triggering combat memories. Please verify my identification so I can get up." Thornton ignored him. He walked back to Marcus' vehicle and began searching it, looking through the windows, opening the door, examining the interior. Hernandez stood near Marcus, her expression increasingly uncomfortable. A small crowd had begun to gather. A white woman who'd been walking to her car stopped and pulled out her phone, recording. An elderly black man who'd been entering the CVS paused and called out, "Hey, that man works at the VA. I know him. He helps veterans. What are you doing to him?" Thornton ignored them. He was going through Marcus' laptop bag, examining case files with veterans' personal information. He checked the glove compartment. He looked under the seats. Marcus remained face down on the asphalt, the heat becoming unbearable. Sweat poured from his face. His breathing became rapid, not from exertion, but from the PTSD response triggered by being restrained in a vulnerable position. His mind flashed to moments in Afghanistan, pinned down, unable to move, waiting for danger to pass. "Please, I'm having a PTSD episode. I need to sit up. Check my ID. Call the VA. Verify who I am." 18 minutes passed. 18 minutes with Marcus Williams face down on scorching asphalt in 91-degree heat, handcuffed, while Special Agent Thornton searched his vehicle without probable cause and without consent. 18 minutes while multiple witnesses recorded on their phones. 18 minutes while Hernandez finally pulled Thornton aside and whispered urgently that they needed to verify the badge and release him immediately. Finally, Thornton returned to where Marcus lay on the ground. He reached down and grabbed the VA badge still hanging from the lanyard around Marcus' neck. He examined it closely for the first time. Official federal employee identification, photo matching Marcus' face, position listed as case manager, Department of Veterans Affairs. Thornton pulled out his phone and called the VA office in Springfield. The conversation was brief. Yes, Marcus Williams was a current employee. Yes, he had appointments scheduled that day. Yes, the badge was legitimate. Thornton ended the call and looked down at Marcus. "Stand up." Marcus pushed himself to his knees, his face red and raw from the hot pavement, his shirt soaked with sweat. His legs shook as he stood. "You can verify my military service, too. My DD-214 is in the glove compartment. I served in the 101st Airborne, 2 tour in Afghanistan. I'm not a criminal. I'm a veteran trying to eat lunch." Thornton removed the handcuffs. "You're free to go." Marcus rubbed his wrists, deep red marks visible where the metal had dug in. "Free to go? You detained me for 18 minutes on hot asphalt for eating lunch. You violated my Fourth Amendment rights. You ignored my federal employee badge. You triggered a PTSD episode. And now I'm free to go. We were investigating a report." "What report?" "There was no report. You saw a black man sitting in a car and decided that was suspicious." "That's racial profiling." Thornton turned and walked back to his SUV. Hernandez lingered for a moment, her expression apologetic but silent. They drove away without providing Marcus a card, without filing an incident report, without documenting the detention. The witnesses remained. The woman who'd recorded the entire encounter approached Marcus. "I got everything on video. That was completely wrong. Do you want me to send this to you?" Marcus nodded, giving her his email address. His hands were shaking. His face burned from the pavement. His heart raced from the PTSD response. He stood in the parking lot for several minutes, trying to regain composure before getting back in his car. Should federal agents be required to provide written justification for detentions lasting longer than 5 minutes? Let me know what you think. Marcus Williams did not return to work that afternoon. He sat in his car for 20 minutes trying to calm the PTSD response that had been triggered by the detention. His hands shook. His breathing remained rapid. The combat memories that had been under control for months flooded back. Being pinned down, unable to move, vulnerable to attack. He called his supervisor at the VA, explained what had happened, and requested emergency leave for the rest of the day. His supervisor, a former Marine who understood PTSD, immediately approved the leave and urged Marcus to seek support. Marcus drove directly to the VA mental health clinic where he'd been receiving treatment for years. His therapist, Dr. Patricia Chen, saw him immediately when the receptionist explained the situation. The emergency session lasted 90 minutes. Dr. Chen documented the incident, the PTSD trigger, and the trauma response. She prescribed temporary anxiety medication and scheduled daily check-ins for the following week. That evening, Marcus contacted the American Civil Liberties Union. He'd saved the video from the witness, a recording that showed everything. Thornton approaching without reasonable suspicion, ignoring Marcus' federal employee badge, handcuffing him, forcing him face down on scorching pavement, and holding him there for 18 minutes while searching his vehicle without consent. The ACLU attorney who reviewed the video recognized it immediately as a clear Fourth Amendment violation. She connected Marcus with a civil rights law firm specializing in unlawful detention cases. Within 48 hours, Marcus had legal representation and a strategy for seeking accountability. The law firm filed formal complaints with 3 agencies: the Department of Homeland Security Office of Inspector General, the DHS Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, and the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Each complaint included the video evidence, witness statements from the 5 people who'd recorded or observed the detention, medical documentation from Dr. Chen about the PTSD episode, and Special Agent Thornton's disciplinary history showing 7 prior complaints. The DHS Office of Inspector General launched an investigation within 2 weeks. Investigators interviewed Marcus, reviewed the video, spoke with witnesses, and examined Thornton's personnel file. They discovered what should have been immediately disqualifying: 7 prior complaints in 9 years, 5 involving allegations of unlawful detention and racial profiling, 2 sustained violations, and yet Thornton remained on duty with full investigative authority. Special Agent Kevin Thornton was placed on administrative leave 6 weeks after the incident. His partner, Lisa Hernandez, was given a written reprimand for failing to intervene when she recognized the detention lacked reasonable suspicion. The case was referred to the Department of Justice for potential criminal civil rights charges, though prosecutors ultimately declined to file charges, citing the high bar for proving criminal intent. Should federal agents face automatic termination after 3 sustained complaints for unlawful detention? Drop your answer. Within a week, the video of Marcus Williams' detention had been viewed more than 6 million times across multiple social media platforms. The footage showed everything: a black man being ordered from his car despite displaying a federal employee badge, forced to the ground on scorching pavement, held face down for 18 minutes while federal agents searched his vehicle without cause. Federal agent detains VA employee and combat veteran during lunch break without reasonable suspicion. Veteran held face down on hot pavement for 18 minutes while agents search car. DHS agent ignores federal employee badge, triggers PTSD episode in Iraq War veteran. The outrage was immediate and bipartisan. Veterans organizations issued statements condemning the detention. The American Legion, Veterans of Foreign Wars, and Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America all called for accountability. Members of Congress from both parties demanded investigations. The Secretary of Veterans Affairs released a statement supporting Marcus Williams and calling for DHS reform. Special Agent Kevin Thornton's career imploded within 60 days. The DHS investigation substantiated that he had conducted a detention without reasonable suspicion, ignored clearly displayed federal credentials, and held a veteran in a position that caused physical pain and psychological trauma for no legitimate investigative purpose. He was terminated from federal service, his security clearance revoked, his law enforcement certification suspended. Thornton issued a brief statement through his attorney. "I believed at the time that my actions were consistent with my training and authority. I regret the outcome." The statement did nothing to quell the anger directed at him, and the agency that had kept him employed despite 7 prior complaints. Marcus Williams filed a federal civil rights lawsuit 10 months after the incident. The suit named Special Agent Kevin Thornton individually, Special Agent Lisa Hernandez for failing to intervene, and the Department of Homeland Security for negligent hiring, training, and supervision. The claims were comprehensive and supported by extensive evidence. Unlawful detention and seizure in violation of the Fourth Amendment without reasonable suspicion or probable cause. Excessive use of authority by forcing compliance with an unlawful detention through physical restraint on dangerously hot pavement. Deliberate indifference to medical needs by ignoring statements about PTSD and visible distress during prolonged restraint. Unreasonable search of vehicle without consent, probable cause, or warrant. Intentional infliction of emotional distress causing documented PTSD episode requiring emergency mental health treatment. Racial profiling and discrimination under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983. Negligent hiring and retention by DHS for keeping Thornton employed despite 7 complaints and 2 sustained violations. Failure to train federal agents on constitutional limitations of investigative authority and recognition of federal credentials. The complaint included Special Agent Thornton's complete disciplinary record, 7 complaints over 9 years, 5 involving unlawful detention and racial profiling, 2 sustained violations followed by inadequate remedial action. All documented, all ignored by an agency that prioritized investigative activity over constitutional compliance. The Department of Justice attorneys assigned to defend the case reviewed the evidence and reached an unavoidable conclusion: indefensible. Video was clear. The medical documentation was extensive. The witness testimony was consistent. The disciplinary history showed a pattern the agency had failed to address. Settlement negotiations began 14 months after the lawsuit was filed, but Marcus Williams refused initial settlement offers. He wanted a jury to see what had happened. He wanted public accountability. He wanted a verdict that would force systemic change. The case went to trial 22 months after the incident. The jury heard Marcus testify about his military service, his work helping veterans, his PTSD treatment, and the 18 minutes he spent face down on scorching asphalt while federal agents violated his constitutional rights. They watched the video from multiple angles. They heard from Dr. Chen about the severe PTSD episode triggered by the detention. They reviewed Thornton's disciplinary record showing 7 complaints that DHS had failed to address adequately. The jury deliberated for 9 hours. They returned a verdict in favor of Marcus Williams: $5 million in compensatory damages for constitutional violations, emotional distress, and pain and suffering, $3 million in punitive damages against Special Agent Kevin Thornton personally for willful disregard of constitutional rights, and $200,000 against Special Agent Lisa Hernandez for failure to intervene. The total verdict, $8.2 million, $1 of the largest civil rights awards ever against federal law enforcement agents. Special Agent Kevin Thornton filed for bankruptcy within months. The verdict would follow him permanently. Marcus Williams testified during the trial. His testimony was measured, powerful, and devastating. "I'm a case manager at the Department of Veterans Affairs. I've worked there for 6 years helping veterans navigate benefits, disability claims, and mental health services. I understand what veterans need because I was one. I enlisted in the Army at 19. I deployed to Afghanistan twice. I served in the 101st Airborne. I earned the Army Commendation Medal. I came home with PTSD." He paused. "On July 17th, I was eating lunch in a parking lot between appointments. I had my federal employee badge hanging around my neck. I had my military challenge coin in my cup holder. I was listening to a podcast, and Special Agent Thornton decided I looked suspicious." Another pause. "I showed him my badge immediately. I identified myself as a federal employee and a veteran. I offered my military ID. He didn't care. He ordered me out of my car. He handcuffed me. He forced me face down on pavement so hot it burned my skin. And he held me there for 18 minutes while he searched my car without my consent and without probable cause." His voice strengthened. "I have PTSD from combat. Being restrained in a vulnerable position triggers combat memories. I told Agent Thornton that. I explained I was having a PTSD episode. He ignored me. For 18 minutes I lay on burning asphalt having flashbacks to Afghanistan, unable to protect myself, while federal agents violated my constitutional rights." He looked directly at the jury. "I served my country. I risked my life in combat. I came home and dedicated my career to helping other veterans. And Special Agent Thornton treated me like a criminal because I was a black man sitting in a car. He had 7 prior complaints. 7. DHS knew he targeted people of color. They knew he detained people without reasonable suspicion, but they kept him on duty, and he did to me exactly what he'd done to others. The courtroom was silent. Should federal agencies face mandatory external review after agents accumulate 5 civil rights complaints? Drop your answer. This was not about one agent's bad judgment. This was about a federal agency that allowed Kevin Thornton to accumulate 7 complaints over 9 years without removing him from investigative duties. This was about a system that treats each violation in isolation, never connecting the pattern, never acknowledging that serial violators of constitutional rights should not carry federal badges. Special Agent Thornton's disciplinary record told a story his supervisors chose to ignore. 7 complaints, 5 involving unlawful detention, 2 sustained violations. Every complaint documented the same behavior, targeting minorities, acting on hunches rather than facts, detaining first and seeking justification later. The pattern was unmistakable, but the Department of Homeland Security responded with written reprimands and mandatory training that Thornton attended but never internalized. Kevin Thornton's federal career is over. That is justice. The jury awarded $8.2 million. That is accountability. Thornton filed for bankruptcy. That is financial consequence. But money does not undo the trauma of being held face down on scorching asphalt while having a PTSD episode. Verdicts do not restore the sense of safety that Marcus Williams lost that afternoon. Terminations do not erase the message that even federal employee badges and military service cannot protect black men from being treated as suspects. The real question is, what changes now? Do federal agencies finally remove agents after 5 complaints instead of 7? Do supervisors finally recognize patterns instead of treating each violation as an isolated incident? Do we finally acknowledge that detaining people without reasonable suspicion is a constitutional violation regardless of how suspicious an agent feels? Because if we do not fix the systems that kept Thornton employed despite 7 complaints, if we do not address the culture that teaches federal agents to equate blackness with suspicion, then we are just waiting for the next Kevin Thornton, the next Marcus Williams, the next veteran held face down on hot pavement for the crime of eating lunch. Comment if you believe this should be federal policy. 3 sustained civil rights complaints trigger automatic termination from federal law enforcement positions. And if you think these stories matter, if you believe accountability starts with awareness and change starts with pressure, then hit that subscribe button. We are not stopping. We are going to keep exposing these patterns. We are going to keep demanding better. We are going to keep fighting for the veterans, the federal employees, the citizens, and everyone who deserves to exist in public spaces without being criminalized for their skin color. This is not just about one agent or one veteran. It is about all of us and the society we are willing to accept.